You're listening to Tony Graham on Binjang 91.5, and it's time for Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson. Good morning, Mathew.
Good morning, Tony. I've been missing you over the last week. I haven't been chatting to you much about technology in the last week.
Well, it's really great to get you back in the studio too this week, I have to say, even if it's by the internet.
Exactly right. Technology,
yes,
solutions for all problems.
Right. Technology, yeah, that's what it is. Now, I can't remember the last time I used a payphone. I think would have been back in the 70s. Anyway, but things are about to change with payphones in Australia. So the term is about to be very confusing. There's calls from a payphone are about to be free, I believe. Is that true?
What do you call a payphone, Tony, that's free to use? How do you call it a payphone? I don't know what they're going to be called. And it's actually surprising how many people still use payphones. I'm constantly surprised about people who talk to me about using a payphone, and I'm a bit like you. It's been a long time since I used payphones. I think once you got to the stage where you had a mobile phone in your hand, you didn't really need a payphone, and even before that, it was probably pretty convenient to get to a payphone. But there are 15,076 public payphones owned by Telstra across Australia at the moment. And they've been trying to utilise those bits of infrastructure, those pieces of real estate they've got across the nation for different things. People may have seen the little Wi-Fi signal pop up on top, so you've had some free Wi-Fi available from them. But people have still been making phone calls. In fact, it's not much in the whole scheme of things, but Telstra have still generated about $5 million in revenue from those payphones across Australia. And they obviously got to the point where they said, well, $5 million isn't really enough to bother about. I'm sure just the collection of funds from those payphones, and obviously they're electronic funds now, not the old coin fashion, but the collection of those funds, accounting for those funds, it's probably at the point it's not really worth keeping the whole network. So I'm sure they deliberated back and forth, but in the end, they decided to just make calls free. So you can, from today, pick up a telephone at a payphone, make a call anywhere in this nation to a landline, to a mobile, and that will be free. There's no restriction except a 6-hour limit. Now, most people probably can finish their phone call in 6 hours, but they've had to put some sort of limit on there. So that will be something that some groups that are worried about mental health of people, Salvation Army, Lifeline, those sort of organisations, have said that this is absolutely fantastic for Australians that feel a little bit isolated and may not have the funds to have a mobile phone. This has been, or they believe this will be a huge benefit for those people out there.
Well, I think we'll have to wait and see. I just wonder if it's one of those schemes to actually get rid of more payphones. Oh, sorry, free phones. We'll have to call them free phones from now on.
Free phones have to come into something, won't we? Well, it's interesting. Even last year, Tony, 11 million phone calls were made with the public telephones out there last year, and that's even more than I thought it would have been. And Telstra has done it in the past. When there have been emergencies, when there have been bushfires, that type of thing, they've opened up the payphone network to be free. And emergency calls, so 230,000 people last year made emergency calls, such as 000 calls, for example. Again, that seems like a huge number of calls that were made when logically you would think that most people would pull a phone out of their pocket and make that call. But obviously there are people out there that either don't have that access, or maybe an area where they don't have a good enough reception, and so they've got to use the public telephone network.
Yeah. Now, Mathew, there's one of the huge competitive advantages, so-called, is that Tesla has their own supercharger network, which is exclusive to Tesla. But that's about to change. Now, when you go to a supercharger, you have to pay for that, don't you? So it probably would pay Tesla to open it up to other customers. It mightn't be so good for you. You might have to wait in line now.
That's right. And I don't actually have to pay for usage of the supercharger network. So that's one of the things, one of the advantages of some of the early adopters from Tesla. The Model S, for example, came with free supercharging for life. So I never have to pay and never would have to pay in one of my vehicles. The next vehicle I bought has a limit on how many kilometres. So it's got 1,500 kilometres of supercharging kilometres free before you've got to start paying. But you don't use superchargers all the time, so that usually does you for a while. But you're right, one of the big advantages of the Tesla, buying a Tesla vehicle, was that they built their own supercharger network. They're quite fast at those superchargers. They put them in strategic locations, so it's quite easy for the customers to charge up. And I've heard people say it, either pulled up at superchargers or just in general conversation, oh, why can't I plug in at that particular charger? I'm sorry, you don't have a Tesla. Now, it's quite interesting because they are talking about the fact they want to open up that network. Now, from a Tesla perspective, there's logic in it. They'll logically charge non-Tesla vehicles a higher rate than they would charge Tesla vehicles. Some people might think it might rob Tesla of sales, but on the contrary, I think people will see that the Tesla network is more advantageous to them. Again, it might be cheaper pricing, the charging rate might be a little bit better, but I don't think Tesla minds the idea of people with other vehicles besides Teslas pulling up at a Tesla supercharger and chatting away to a few Tesla owners. And I think they believe in the strength of their product enough that Tesla owners will start to influence those non-Tesla owners. So I think all of that bodes well from a Tesla perspective. It's quite easy in places like Europe and China. They've got a standardized charging cable connector in those countries or those areas. So it'll be just a software process. Basically, you'll get a app, you'll be able to log into that app and you'll be able to open up your card to be able to charge. So that'll be just a decision that Tesla will make. In America, it's a bit trickier. They've got different charging connectors there in America for Tesla vehicles and their supercharger network. So they'll need some form of adapter, which either the car manufacturers will provide or Tesla may provide. So a few little minor hiccups or hurdles to get over, but I think it'll be interesting just to see that whole network opened up and whether that starts to accelerate the adoption of EVs in general.
Yeah. Well, of course, Mathew, a great concern with a lot of people these days is the security of the internet and internet services and data. So how secure is a password for a streaming service?
It's something we probably don't think about that much, but back in the old days, Tony, when we used to be able to travel overseas, I remember doing one trip, actually just before the lockdown, we tripped around Europe and just about every second Airbnb we'd pull into, you'd turn on the TV and someone was already logged in there. They'd just left themselves logged in, so someone else was using their streaming service. Now, there's no additional charge. You might find it a bit annoying because you had so many users available and suddenly one of those users is still logged in, so you might go and log out everyone and change your password. But there are people out there, and it sounds ridiculous for how much you pay for a streaming service, but there are people out there who are selling access to hacked streaming accounts. And they're not that expensive, so you would have thought that it probably isn't that big a deal. How much could you sell a hacked streaming account for? Probably not much, because you might only pay $10 a month for it anyway, but people are relying on these hacked accounts to be able to have a one-off fee. You might pay $20 once off, but then be able to keep using it forevermore, because most people don't worry about changing their streaming passwords. They keep using the same one. And if someone doesn't go and create a separate profile, they're probably not going to notice. They might sometimes find, oh, wait up, I'm at my limit of how many users I can have logged in at the same time. I better ring one of my kids or my husband, or what's going on? Why are they all used up? But some people just go, oh, well, whatever, I won't worry about it at the moment. I'll look at something else or use one of my other services. It's only when people start popping up different profiles, if they get a bit bold and they start creating their own profile on your account, people say, hold on, I don't know who Jimmy Bob is. Why is there a profile created for Jimmy Bob? And that's when sometimes people wake up to the fact. But what people do is they buy these lists of streaming accounts and passwords off the dark web, and then they'll go and run these little algorithms that will basically test a whole range of streaming services, because people often use the same password on different services, which is obviously something I say not to do, but I also understand it's a real pain having different passwords for every different service that you use. So what happens often is they do use same password for every different service. People sell these streaming service accounts, and then away you go. People are out there often using someone else's account. Not good for the providers, the Netflixes of the world, and obviously not good for you if you start running out of the number of services that you can have running at the same time.
Well, there you go. You'll be listening to Mathew Dickerson in Tech Talk on Binjang 91.5. And stick around, because this afternoon we have another Tech Talk. And in the meantime, though, it's back to Angela and all the good music and information on Binjang 91.5.
Too much technology, Tony, is never enough.